The movie begins with a scene where a plane named Cactus 1549 loses both its engines while departing from runway 4 of LaGuardia Airport. As the plane attempts to return, it crashes into a building, causing a massive explosion. After this scene, a man named Sully is introduced. He is a pilot with 42 years of experience in flying planes. However, today he seems deeply worried about something. But what is he concerned about? The reason for his worry was an incident. On January 15, 2009, Captain Sully, along with his co-pilot and a few other crew members, took off from LaGuardia Airport with 155 passengers aboard Cactus 1549. A few moments after takeoff, when the plane reached an altitude of 2,800 feet, a flock of birds suddenly appeared in front of it. As the plane passed through the flock, both engines were completely damaged. It's worth mentioning that when a plane is flying at a high altitude, even a small bird strike can critically damage its engines, which isn't an uncommon phenomenon. At that moment, Captain Sully activated all the emergency protocols in the plane and tried to establish communication with the control room. The control room advised him to return to the runway as quickly as possible. They prepared runways 2 through 9 in New York for an emergency landing, instructing him to bring the plane back to the airport. The passengers were informed that the plane would land soon and were asked to remain cautious, which frightened them even more. At that point, Captain Sully declared that it wouldn't be possible to reach the runway, as the plane, with its damaged engines, could not travel the 60 miles required to reach the runway. Thus, Captain Sully made the critical decision to land the plane in the Hudson River. Immediately after this announcement, communication with the control room was lost. The control room staff was alarmed upon hearing about the emergency landing, as landing such a large plane on a river was unprecedented and considered highly dangerous, with almost no chance of survival. A helicopter was dispatched to assess the situation. It was observed that the plane was steadily descending. Meanwhile, Captain Sully skillfully landed the plane on the river. Inside the plane, the passengers experienced what felt like an earthquake. All the lights went out, but fortunately, the landing was successful. The emergency exits of the plane were opened immediately, and Captain Sully instructed all the passengers to evacuate. As water began to enter the plane rapidly, the passengers became frantic. Amidst this terrifying environment, everyone managed to exit the plane. A Coast Guard ship in the river spotted the plane, and immediate rescue efforts were initiated. The passengers were rescued one by one. Additionally, trained swimmers were sent via helicopter to rescue passengers trapped in the water. Ultimately, though some sustained minor injuries, all passengers survived. Captain Sully and his co-pilot were the last to leave the plane. Sully risked his life to save everyone else. This heroic act spread rapidly, making Sully a real-life hero. However, since Captain Sully didn't follow the control room's instructions and made the decision to land the plane on the river, an investigation was initiated against him. A meeting was held with Captain Sully, his co-pilot, and other crew members in a room. During the meeting, when it was stated, "Today we will discuss this plane crash," Sully immediately protested, saying, "You are mistaken. The plane didn't crash. I landed it on water. It's called a water landing, and it was an emergency situation. Otherwise, I would have never done this." The committee asked, "Why didn't you return to LaGuardia?" Sully explained that under those circumstances, traveling 60 miles to the runway wasn't feasible. The river was the only location where he believed the plane could land safely. The committee informed him that they would use computer simulations to determine if the plane could have returned safely or if Sully's reckless decision risked the lives of so many people. They also questioned him about his condition before takeoff, asking how much sleep he had, whether he was physically fit, or if he was intoxicated. Sully firmly stated that he was completely healthy and normal. From their questioning, it was clear that the committee was trying to prove by any means that Captain Sully had made a grave mistake by landing the plane in the river. Meanwhile, due to the investigation, Sully couldn't return home, leaving his wife extremely worried. News channels covered the event, sometimes praising Sully and other times criticizing him. Captain Sully appeared deeply affected, reflecting on his 42-year career during which he safely transported countless passengers. And now, for a single 208-second incident, he was being accused. He kept imagining what would have happened if he had attempted to return to the runway. He envisioned the plane crashing into a building and exploding, killing everyone. This is the same imagination shown in the movie's opening scene, highlighting the immense mental pressure Captain Sully was under, causing him to hallucinate. He constantly questioned himself, could I have really made it back to the runway? This haunting thought kept recurring, along with the certainty that if he had returned, the plane would have crashed into a building, resulting in the loss of countless lives. So, I made the right decision to land the plane on water. The investigation committee's doubts were mentally exhausting for Captain Sully. Captain Sully's co-pilot was also interrogated. The co-pilot confirmed that all emergency measures were taken as soon as the engines failed. He stated that they followed all the guidelines provided to pilots for emergency situations. Even then, it was absolutely impossible to return the plane to the airport at that moment. If Captain Sully had not landed the plane on the river, everyone would have perished. Eventually, the investigation came to an end. It was time to announce the results. The committee announced that they would listen to the cockpit voice recording to reach a conclusion about what actually happened that day. Why didn't the captain attempt to return to the runway? Did he deliberately endanger so many people by landing the plane on water? At this point, the committee conducted simulations using computers with two planes. They replicated the situation where, at the same distance from the airport and the same altitude, a flock of birds would strike the engines, rendering them inoperative. They tried to determine if the plane could have returned to the runway. But Captain Sully objected to this. He stated that experiencing something in reality and analyzing it through computer graphics in a room are vastly different. He emphasized that the simulation felt like an adventurous game, not a real-life event. In reality, when both engines fail at such a high altitude, the responsibility of 155 people falls entirely on the pilot's shoulders. At that moment, landing a plane in a deep river is not an easy task. Captain Sully further explained that no one had ever trained him to handle such an extraordinary situation. Then, the investigation committee listened to the cockpit voice recording. From the recording, it was evident that Captain Sully made a final attempt to turn the plane left and return to LaGuardia Airport. However, the plane began to descend rapidly, leaving him with no other option. Forced to save everyone's lives, he decided that landing the plane on the Hudson River was the only viable solution. The recording revealed the immense skill and mental strength required to land such a large plane on water in that situation, dispelling all doubts about Captain Sully's decision. The investigation committee finally announced that Captain Sully's actions were truly miraculous, an unprecedented event in history. They also revealed that both engines had been recovered from the water and were severely damaged. Flying the plane to the runway using those engines would have been impossible. Captain Sully was declared completely innocent and was honored for his heroic actions. However, he humbly stated that it wasn't just his efforts, but also the timely response of the Coast Guard and rescue teams that ensured everyone's safety. The story of a real-life hero ends here. It's amazing to think that this movie is based on a true event. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.